Welcome back, gardeners. Lindsay here with the Mindful Living Movement, and we are here for a garden tour. So I'm going to share with you kind of we're going to call it the Roses and Thorns edition. So I'm going to show you all the exciting new things, and then I'm going to show you the stuff that, you know, isn't going quite how it's supposed to. Also, you probably can't see him right now, but I have a squirrel friend who has moved in. So far I haven't seen any damage in my garden. But he seems to be liking the things that are falling out of the bird feeder. So I don't know, might have to relocate that maybe a little farther away from my garden. We'll have to see. So let's start with the other critters. So the squirrel, he's new. Haven't seen much damage yet, but the birds. We have had birds like crazy. I've got bird netting over probably half my garden at this point, which isn't the prettiest, but you know what? I don't really care because it means that I'm actually going to get my harvest and not nature. So this kind of just how it goes when you're an organic gardener and you're inviting nature into your space. You know, we're trying to find this balance of the ecosystem, and nature likes to eat the things that we like to eat. So that's just kind of how it goes sometimes. Now I've got a really fun new trellis that I'm super pumped about. I'm going to go into complete detail on how it's built, why it's so fabulous in a different video, but I'll show you a look at that. I've had some early harvests, so definitely one of the roses, lots of little early harvests with my kale, with my strawberries, and I've even had a pepper that's come ready already, which is fun. What else? I did put some new plants in the garden too. Some plants that I probably shouldn't have stuck in the ground right now, but you know what? Gotta experiment, see how things go. So let me take you around and see all of the good stuff and the not so good stuff, but it's all still good, right? Because we're outside gardening. So let's get going. They're super cute, but you better not be eating my garden. Let's start with this badass beauty. So you've seen the beginnings of it in other videos, but it is finally set up. You can see that I've got all the strings happening now, connecting them to my tomato plants, which I'm super pumped about. My tomatoes were starting to fall right over and lean against the fence, so they were really, really due for it. I'll give you a close look at the beautiful, most organized tomatoes I may have ever had. So here is a little closer look. You can see all the strings dropping down and connecting to each tomato, giving it a pretty cool trellis and the ability to kind of get a little bit more space from each other. And up here I have them sort of set up in a way that I can slide them apart. I'm going to do a full video detailed on exactly what's going on here, how I've pruned them, how I've knotted them, but overall I'm really excited about this. They're growing straight up more or less exactly how I wanted them to, which is pretty cool. The very first fruit are starting as well. There's another little bundle of them in the back there, and these ones are, ooh, I lost my sticks already. I believe these are, they're a little orange one called Sun Gold, I think, which are awesome, like little Sour Patch Kids almost. And look at the color on these things. Like this crazy dark purple, and even these dark purple flowers. I've got a few of them happening. I gotta look at the specifics. My little tag says it is a Hungarian pepper, but after that I'm not sure exactly. There's definitely more to it, I just didn't write it all on the tag. There's some other ones. Ooh, look at this guy. Ooh, look at how huge he is. Peppercini. Nice. A lot of my peppers that I started really early in the house, they're all fruiting like crazy. So I'm quite excited about that because I wanted a big ass harvest of them. Oop, here's another one. The yellow wax pepper. Some of these ones were just so far behind. Look at how tiny they are, and yet they are flowering, which is kind of fun. These calendula were self-seeders from last year, and this area, if you can even refer back to my very first one, was loaded with little seedlings of these guys. You can see there's a few more scattered around here. I moved a bunch to the front yard, and then I just kind of left a few here. I've accidentally weeded some out, which is kind of the fun thing about self-seeding plants, is you can usually afford to sacrifice a couple, but I've definitely left a few in here because when calendula flowers, it is so gorgeous, and it's a nice kind of ground cover once all these guys are growing up and away from everything. So the strawberries have started to fruit, and as you can see, they are covered in bird netting because, well, you guessed it, the little birdies were devouring them. Ooh, look at this one. Look at that. I wish I had more room for berries, but getting an abundance of strawberries is pretty sweet. So good. They rarely make it into the house. Here's my little treats as I walk around the garden. So here's one of those thorns, aka things that are, not doing what you want them to. This is all the spinach. It has flowered or is in the process of flowering, and I am letting it flower because I want to be able to harvest the seeds and everything from it. I probably pulled half of it just so I could sneak in some flowers and other things. I didn't want it all to just spend its time flowering, but I mean, it is kind of pretty looking. Even if it's maybe not going to be the yummiest, there's still lots of leaves that you can harvest and eat on these guys. The flavor definitely changes quite a lot. And another thing that has been happening like crazy this year is leaf miners. They're just off the charts. I got to go around and harvest all of these. It's kind of a tricky one to get rid of these things because they lay their eggs and then they burrow inside the leaves and go and eat everything, and it is a fly that causes this. So I've seen it on my spinach and also on my Swiss chard quite a lot. Not extravagant, but not enough that I'm going to bother treating anything. I'm just removing all of these to get all the kind of larvae and things out of the garden. Ooh, here's a rose, aka an exciting surprise. My calendula, chamomile, pardon me. This is a volunteer chamomile, and yeah, it's already flowering. That's actually pretty cool. I'm excited about that. It's even flowering before some of my transplanted ones. All right, this is a surprise. I actually didn't even know that I was going to get to share this with you. This is an acorn squash, and one that's already not just in its flowering, but one that looks like it has germinated well and is already on its way to producing. So that's kind of exciting. So acorn squash number 2. Check that out. Got some fruit already. Lots of flowers. Oops, just knocked a male flower off. Oh well. My borage is on its way to flowering, and they're actually not even that big for them to be flowering already, which is a fun one. There's some more right there. And these peas are just finally starting to flower. And I really thickly planted these, as you can probably see, so I think I'm gonna have fun really digging around in here to find everything. This is one of my late planting sections where I was being indecisive. So the Swiss chard that I seeded are just starting to show themselves, and I planted some bush beans, I hope. I kind of mixed up the seeds with some pole beans, so I might be in for a surprise if these turn out to be pole beans, but anyways, they're sprouting and they're doing pretty good. At least if I do need to trellis them, it's not in a super hard space. I can probably make it happen. See if I can block the sun here. This is Auroch, and they didn't germinate super crazy well, but this guy's doing quite good. It's a leafy green that you get to eat. It doesn't actually love heat. However, it doesn't look like it's actually flowering. It's just continuing along, which is cool. So brassica patch number 1, and a lot of these were planted out when I had my low tunnel going and I started the cold season stuff. So for the most part, I would say it's a solid bunch of roses. There's a few thorns. So these are my broccolini. They just did not care for the heat. We got a lot of heat way earlier than we really should have, and they're just, they didn't quite take for that. So I think what I might do is I'm gonna let them flower, but I do have sort of some little buds on the side here that I could harvest just for like some tiny little, to get something off of and let the rest of the plant continue to flower so I can get seeds for it. This one is pretty close to, this kohlrabi here is pretty close to being ready to harvest. It's getting pretty big, probably another week, right in time for my husband to be home. Those are his favorite. This little section here, you may remember from way back, was some bok choy that had just been absolutely devoured by flea beetles. I did manage to harvest and eat some of them. They had a lot of holes in them, but it was easy to wash the flea beetles off, so that wasn't the end of the world. And I was gonna seed start some more kale myself, and then I happened to come across a greenhouse that was blowing out a lot of extras that they had, so I've grabbed a whole bunch more kale and kind of sprinkled them around. And I even tucked some of the newer kale plants here sort of in places that they're definitely going to be shaded for right now, but this kohlrabi is going to get pulled in probably a week, max 2 weeks, and then it's going to open up lots of sun for these guys to grow. And same thing with the broccoli. As soon as they seed all this kale and stuff in here and I pull these, they're going to be able to get everything that they need. They might be a little slow for a while, but that's not the end of the world. Now on to what I'm going to call thorns. So this is a cabbage, and I think that it is going to be kind of the same situation. The heads are just not starting to form, and I know that it needs to get bigger, but it should be kind of starting to show something by now. So I think what tends to happen when cabbage gets too hot is the heads just don't properly form. So I think that's going to maybe end up getting pulled or the leaves eaten on it. And you can probably tell that I had some cabbage worms that did get in here, or the butterflies rather, and then the worms hatched. I haven't treated these at all with anything. I've just been going through, flipping the leaves, seeing if I can find any of the little caterpillars and just yanking them off. I haven't even seen any new eggs or anything like that on the bottoms of the leaves. You can usually spy kind of the little tiny white dots. So I think I'm winning, but you can see some of the broccoli. There was one super fat guy that I found on this plant. Like, look at some of those leaves. He was eating real good. So my very first planting of chard, they're quite big, which is really nice. They've been hit pretty hard by, as you can see here, the leaf miners. They're just, I don't know, really like chard, I guess. So some of this I'm just gonna have to harvest before the leaf miners get at it. So you can see a little bit of damage there on that one. Birds, lovely little birds. I just don't want to cover any more of my garden, so I guess I'm sacrificing some of these to the birds. Sometimes that happens. So this is the peek inside my low tunnel number 2, and the flea beetles were still eating my bok choy, as you can see.
Not like super crazy bad or anything like that. I did give them one spray with my neem oil just to kind of wash down the plant and help slow them down a little bit, because I've got a lot of bok choy in here that's getting pretty close to being able to be harvested, so I really want it to get big enough that I get a good solid harvest. And the greenhouse that I found that was clearing out, they had a bunch of broccoli and they also had some Brussels sprouts that were on for like 40% off. And even though I know that I probably won't get anything out of them because they're going to be growing right through the heat of the summer, I figured, what the heck, this is kind of a shadier area in my garden, and sometimes that means that you can pull off things that are not supposed to happen. So little patch of kale over here. Some of them are new, some of them I planted a little while ago, broccoli, and a crap load of bok choy. Onion and beet patch is coming along quite nicely. Now that the bird netting is on here, my beets are actually standing a chance. The onions are absolutely thriving. Some of them are real fat. Look at this dude. This patch here, this is my carrots and radish, and I actually really need to get in there maybe and thin out some of the radish. I was gonna let them go to seed, but that's gonna start to affect my carrots, and I just don't really want that to happen. Some of them I think actually are ready for eating as well, some of the ones that haven't gone to seed. Another planting of beets. So this one only just went into the ground just over a week ago, and you can see here that all the little guys are starting. I am going to need to get some bird netting on top of this because the birds just love those little tender baby guys. As you can kind of see, this patch, some of the leaves have been nipped off. And if you're wondering why that's planted so thickly, it's because I dumped out a tray of seeds by accident and I just decided to leave them there, and I'm gonna thin them pretty quick here. Zucchini patch is doing really, really well. I'm trying a new method of trellising them up some sticks just to keep them off of the soil. And here's my very first zucchini that's starting. Looks like there's another one right here that's also happening. This guy definitely needs to get pollinated though. This male flower needs to open up pretty quick so that can happen. And the rest of them, beginnings of flowers happening on all the rest, but no other fruits that I see. So my cucumber patch here, I'm quite happy. They've really come around. We had a little bit of a cooler week and they were able to establish without the super crazy heat that we've been having early this year. So I've got to start to sort of point them at my trellis here. They're just kind of hanging over the pots. My mint is going crazy. My lemon balm is doing amazing. These guys are really loving life here. Lots of heat, lots of sun now that they're got some root structure going and they can actually tolerate the hotter, sunnier days. Have to say, I didn't really expect much of this little section here. I think I'd maybe put this in the thorn category. I was really, really hoping to get a crazy amount of cucumbers, but these ones just didn't really love this new spot that I'm experimenting. However, they are trying desperately to come around. Even though they don't look like too much of anything, there is some hope. Like, look at how tiny that is and how horrific that plant looks, and yet it is flowering. It's doing good. Definitely a rose, aka a peony, but a rose in the sense that it is a positive, exciting thing. I've never had these flower before, and so I'm just a teeny tiny bit excited about this, and my other ones in the back there have just started to flower. Also, black calla lilies. Ugh, look at that. Like, could there be a more gorgeous flower? How velvety it is. First round of lilies in the sunny spot. These guys are always the first ones to come up. These should not be flowering, so these definitely end up in the rose category. They just got transplanted last summer and I forgot to water them for a very long time after they got transplanted. So by no rights should they be this happy, but I will take it. Quick look at these Phacelia. Color just doesn't do justice. They're such a pretty blue. Salvia, some of my perennial salvia are in their beginning of flowering. Wall of corn and sunflowers, guess I'll call it cornflowers now, is actually doing quite well. A lot of these are not mammoth sunflowers as I had hoped they would be. They look like they're going to be still a very large variety. We've got the very first one that is doing its thing flowering here. This one, these couple in the middle here are definitely going to be mammoths though. They got a long ways to go yet, I think, before they're going to start putting out flower heads. They will be taller than me if everything goes as planned. One more. Thank you for sticking around for Roses and Thorns edition of my garden tour. And as it usually goes, when you take time to actually appreciate all the exciting new things that are coming up, there's so many more roses, all the positive things, and you practice those gratitude moments. And yeah, I guess it's just nature and critters that I gotta deal with, because that's just how it goes. Squirrels, birds, bugs. But overall, everything is doing smashingly well. If you have any questions, please let me know. Or just let me know how your garden's going along in the comments, and we will see you again soon.